Hey everyone, it's Miss L. This is a lecture for the aquatic environment so I can know that everybody gets everything. There's a lot of content to cover and I want to make sure you guys have all the information. So what you guys are looking at now is the aquatic environments. You want to make sure, again, you understand the different types of ecosystems that are here. First off, we have coral reefs. We have the green is in mangroves. We have lakes and rivers, which are all going to explain today. But first, let's make sure you understand the locations of our oceans, because that's where we're going to start off with. You want to make sure you know the different four areas. Your Atlantic, which is right here. Here's your North and South Atlantic. You have your Pacific here, and you have your Arctic, which is up here, and you have your Indian Ocean. And then you also have your freshwater ecosystems. When you look at the different types of aquatic ecosystems, we have saltwater and freshwater. And again, the different life zones that we'll talk about in a moment. Kind of let me get to a picture that I want of the different ecosystems. Let's get to the coastal zone here. But we have our oceans and we have our estuaries for saltwater. We have coastlands and shorelines, as you see here. We have coral reefs, which is not pictured here. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow, as well as mangroves, mangrove forests, which is the green back on this picture right here. These mangroves forests. So these are great barriers, especially for wave action, because it protects the shoreline and erosion and all that. We'll get to that in a little bit. Then we get to freshwater that's located with our rivers and streams. You have lakes, rivers, streams, and your inland wetlands. Like I said in class, wetlands kind of encompass like this big umbrella where you have estuaries is a part of a wetland, but that's a coastal wetland because that's a mixture of your salt and your freshwater. That's where the inland kind of meets the coast. But then you have your inland wetlands, and those are very important too because it's huge in biodiversity. It also too acts as a sponge, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But with the AP exam, wetlands are huge, and I have like a little bit of a feeling that they may talk about wetlands, and that's one of the FRQs you guys are writing about. So we will get started. Let's see. When we look at our oceans, kind of get to where I want to get back to here. You remember you have the different types of organisms. You're going to have to memorize those. So again, you have your plankton, which consists of phyto, your zooplankton, examples protozoans like amoebas, parameciums, and all that stuff. You have your nectons. That's going to be any type of free swimming. You have your benthos, your bottom dwellers, as well as your decomposers, which is very similar in your terrestrial. The key factors for any type of ocean ecosystem, let me get back to this picture. Very important that you guys memorize these, write them down, put them in a little highlighter, whatever. But we talked about them in class. Temperature, dissolved oxygen, which is also called DO. You have your available food, available light. Remember, that's the eutrophication zone. In this case, it's right here because that's where that sunlight is going to penetrate in order for all this action to happen, including photosynthesis. And that is the euphotic zone, or another term in the lakes and stream is also called the photic zone. Same thing. When you look at saltwater ecosystems, they are irreplaceable reservoirs because of food, you have biodiversity, and those ecological and economical impacts, as you can see here. So when you have a lot of damage, let's say in Katrina, looking at Hurricane Ike over on the New Jersey shore or on the East Coast, all those things that are happening is going to change that ecosystem for economically and ecologically. So you're going to see these huge changes. So again, for the exam, when you start seeing these, I want you to memorize 3, and not just memorize. So let me erase that. I want you to take 3 of these and be able to explain, discuss, and explain, which means in your claim data commentary, you're going to claim what it is, you're going to describe what it is, and then you're going to comment what it is, which means it's a minimum of 3 to 4 sentences. Always go with a minimum of 3. Let's go back to these life zones. And here you have your coastal zone. Again, you might have tides. When you have low tide, you can visually see all these different types of species, which is really cool if you ever get a chance to. You have, and also remember, it's high NPP, which is net primary productivity, as we talked about before. And we'll talk about that more and more as you get used to it. You have the open sea, which is way out here over on the right, and then you have your ocean bottom. And again, as you get further and further away from the coast, you're going to see a dip in the ocean temperatures, a little bit of dip in the DO, so you're not going to see as much productivity as you would near the coast. let's see some other things I want you. All right, let's talk about estuaries a little bit. Estuary is where your seawater and your freshwater meet, where rivers and streams. So thinking of Alabama, you have the Delta over in Mobile, Alabama. They're huge biodiversity. They're called mini nurseries because you have all these habitats for a lot of juvenile, young organisms, such as fish species. We're seeing a whole bunch of, especially from Hurricane Katrina over in Mobile Bay in the Delta, is that they're still seeing a change from Katrina as it moved all that seawater up. It's completely gone further north than what they originally thought, and it's completely changed that ecosystem. So that's something to look into as a case study, because I have to look back when Hurricane Katrina happened, and it might be too far with regards to FRQs, but we'll have to take a look at that to see if somebody wants to look at that for me. But your temperature and your salinity, they vary daily because of the different types, because again, it's that mixture. You have mangrove forests. These forests are these big trees. They have a big root system, and they provide a lot of, again, productivity. And salt marshes and swamps. You might be familiar with swamps. We have a small one, or a couple of them actually, at one of the local elementary schools. I think it's Heritage. But what these estuaries do provide is a lot of marine species like plants. They stabilize shorelines as well. They reduce the wave impact, especially the seagrass in the beds. Same thing with the mangroves. An important economic service. Let's see. Let's look over here. When you have stress, let me kind of get back to it. When you have stressful conditions, again, such as Hurricane Katrina, any type of storms coming in, it's gonna change those nutrients, and it's gonna change the species diversity. And the biggest thing that it does, again, just like an inland wetland, it's a sponge. And what a sponge does is it takes up water. As it takes out water, it's going to filter kind of the dirt. Think of when you wash your dishes. It filters the dirt so it doesn't continue on. And that's what this does, estuaries do with pollutants and toxins and sediments, that it takes it out and kind of filters it in order so that it doesn't change the ecosystems. But the big thing is humans are destroying them. And therefore, that natural flood, I guess you would say, sponge or flood prevention plan with estuaries and wetlands is that they're being destroyed. And so now the United States is going to pay more. I'll have to find that number. They're going to pay more in repair and the cost of flood prevention than to just, I guess, protect and upkeep estuaries. They're going to pay more for that. Less if they just protect. But a couple of things to think about the services that estuaries do. Let's see if I can find that here. Again, they filter toxic pollutants. They provide food, habitats for nurseries. So here's an example of a food chain, a food web. You have multiple food chains. So again, one food chain, kind of review here. You have your bacteria here, your plankton, and it goes, so this is our producers, which is trophic level 1. And then we're going to go here, let's say, to the gulls, and that's just going to be 1 trophic level, going up to consumers 1, trophic level 2. Or we may go from the plankton to, the snowy egret to you have your, I can't see what it says, I believe it's a falcon. So that falcon, now we have our producers, which is trophic level 1. We have our plankton, which is trophic level 2. And we have our snowy egret, trophic level 3. And then we even go to this falcon, which is trophic level 4. However, it is your primary consumers, secondary, tertiary. So a couple of economic impacts I can tell you about is that, again, it gets excess plant nutrients out. It takes away the toxins and the pollutants, as well as sediments. It absorbs other pollutants, maybe from the water. It provides food. It provides timber, fuel wood, and habitats for all these different types of species. It also, again, reduces that storm damage and coast erosion. So there is an important fact of it, and this is really important to memorize and to understand. Again, not just memorize, but understand. So here's what a mangrove forest looks like. If you've been down to Costa Rica or along the coast in the equator area, you can kind of see what a mangrove looks like. It has a lot of fibrous roots. It helps with the erosion and the wave impact. But they slope. It's 70% of generally sloping, sandy, and silty coastlines, and it's in those subtropical regions. Now when we go into intertidal zones, see if I can find my picture or my notes here. Intertidal zones are really cool. This is where your ocean meets the land, and sometimes it can be exposed. If you ever get a chance to see those intertidal zones, it's really cool. They're rocky shores. They get pounded by waves a lot. You may see varieties of algae, snails, crabs walking around. Sandy shores, you may not have plants or algae, but a lot of insects, shorebirds and stuff, crabs and worms. Maybe some sea stars, which is also known as a starfish, and other type of organisms. Now, this you might be familiar with. You see this more on the Gulf and the East Coast, but you have these barrier islands in the ocean. So I'm going to find my notes real quick. But you have what's called primary and secondary dunes. These are long, narrow strips of land and the deposits of sand. What they do is they help prevent the impact of a lot of storms and whatnot, but they protect the mainland, estuaries, and coastal wetlands. So they're the ones that are going to get hit first. As you can see with Hurricane Katrina, even in recently in New Jersey, from the snow that impacted recently, as it came completely through that barrier island, it was even impacted those homes. But again, it's found along the eastern and Gulf coast of Mexico in lots of development. So here's a picture of one. So this probably looks familiar, kind of like Orange Beach and Pensacola and all that stuff. Not Pensacola, what is it called? Orange Beach and Destin and all that stuff. So you may have some homes over here. We have the Gulf on one side. You may have a little bit of homes over here, but you have these primary dunes, and then you may have some secondary dunes. And a lot right here is that recreation, walkways or whatnot. But here's the beach, and this is just to protect from, again, all those storms and whatnot. And those, getting back to here really quickly, just so I can make sure, with the tidal zones. Let me find that picture again. Here we go, right here. Just to make clear, again, it has, you can think of your tidal zones are equivalent to your tropical rainforest, is that they are huge in biodiversity and they're habitats for about 1/4 of all marine species, is that intertidal zone. It's huge amount of natural capita in NPP. If I can find another picture, I will. Kind of out of order here. But let me finish up with the barrier here. But here's something that can have damage to the barriers. This is just a single home left. This is after Hurricane Ike. This was in 2008 in Texas. And this is from the floodwaters. They were completely high, and you see a whole bunch of damage. There's only one house left. And I'm going to stop here with coral reefs because we're going to talk about it in class, but I'll make another video so that everybody can review. Thank you so much. Oops. I guess I need to figure out how to...